Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Rushcliffe series. This is the southernmost district in Nottinghamshire and it contains 59 civil parishes of England. And there's some corkers down here. Let's dive in and check one out. Welcome back to Rushcliffe again, people. Now, if you can remember the Newark and Sherwood series, we covered two places called Kilvington and Alverton, and they were so small I just did one walk around the pair of them together. Well, this village I brought you to today is their neighbour, and again, it's equally as tiny. It's a case of blink and you'll miss it. Its name is Flawborough. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Flawborough, Stony Hill. This week in Rushcliffe we come to the last parish in the northeastern corner of the district. Just like the last few we've been in, this is another really small place. A drive through this one takes less than a minute. I'll be honest though, stopping to have a little wander is not a bad idea. Flawborough has a small church which is no longer consecrated, but you can still visit the graves in the churchyard with prior permission. It's right next to the principal house in the village, which serves as the head office of the local farming operation, but it's got a bit more to it than that, as we will discover. The village is otherwise residential and it's expanding a little in one particular area, but it'll never be a thriving urban metropolis. There's way too much farmland here for that, all owned and managed by Flawborough Farms. Now, how about this for a fact? Flawborough Hall was once owned by Major Edward Harold Spalding, who became the High Sheriff of Nottinghamshire in 1951. He was a partner in the Griffin Spalding department store in the Old Market Square of Nottingham. His business would go on to be one of the biggest household names on the British High Street, and who would have thought this tiny hamlet would have that connection? Let's go and find the hall and the farms and everything else that's on offer in Flawborough. We start at the eastern end of Flawborough's main street. The first house is a thatched cottage, the only one of its type left in Flawborough today. Although this road is officially unnamed, it's considered to be part of the ancient Long Hedge Lane, which we drove on to leave Shelton behind last week. Once again, Flawborough is another village all about farming. It used to have a dairy, that's this building here, but now the farmers in these parts work the arable land around the place. It's all managed by Flawborough Farms, led in turn by generations of the Hawthorne family since 1954. The land around Flawborough produces things like oilseed rape, wheat and beans. These have been the only arable crops for the last 30 years, with spring peas having also been grown for the last 5 too. Flawborough Farms are based at Hall Farm, which is not this. This is the manor house, which is likely 18th century, but it's not listed. It dominates Flawborough's only road junction, from which a massive noisy tractor from Flawborough Farms emerged while I was here. Flawborough is expanding a tiny bit. These new builds are right next to Hall Farm, whose extensive complex of buildings are on the only bend in the road. They include the huge Flawborough Hall itself, which has a really interesting bit of the UK's retail history. The hall was once owned by Major Edward Harold Spalding, a partner of the Griffin Spalding department store, which still stands on Long Row in Nottingham's Market Square. After being bought out and rebranded, Griffin Spalding would become part of Debenhams, one of the UK's biggest high street names, until 2021. Next to Hall Farm is the former Church of St Peter. It's no longer in use and it's privately owned. However, you can still visit the graves with prior permission, provided you want to do so at a reasonable hour. This notice on the wall outside gives you the details. St Peter's closed in 2009. It's a simple red brick and stone building surrounded by trees, and it's a bit hard to see it clearly. It was rebuilt in 1841 and its bells were refurbished in 1976. One of its benefactors was the Duke of Newcastle, but the main ones were the Staunton family from the village of the same name, just a couple of miles away to the north. Well, it might be the former church here in Flawborough, but the bus shelter here still uses the name church, as you can probably see just there. And that's really it. Once you get beyond this bus shelter, this is the view you've got. Just beautiful Nottinghamshire countryside. And lots of it. These villages out here are extremely small, really tiny places. And like I said at the beginning of this one, if you drive through them, it is really a case of blink and you do miss them. And they really need to be put on the map. But that's where I come in, isn't it? I'm not saying I'm the be all and end all, but nobody else is doing this, are they? Just before the end of the village, there's a little track that leads to a field, and I couldn't resist this view. I stood at the gate for a while and admired the landscape, which stretches off far into the distance. We're facing northwest here, and the River Trent is somewhere in the furthest reaches of this shot. Even though I grew up further along the Trent Valley, it's just as good here as it is there. Lovely stuff. And with Flawborough done, we have now completed the northeastern corner of Rushcliffe. There's still 24 to go though in the district, and most are a lot larger than any of the villages we've seen just recently. Join me next week then for another Rushcliffe-based adventure. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.